Today I will be reading from my 2006 issue of Poetic Refreshment Magazine, Who Remembers the Kings of Atlantis? Today I will be reading the selection, Fluxes in Tide. Been waiting a long time to make this public. Fluxes in Tide, thus read the title, heard outside the open window, when the man inside read loudly on the phone. Flux Ickson died, a passerby heard, repeating it in shock and disbelief. Flux Ickson was a friend of his. He lived right down the street and tended bar downtown at the Green Tea Leaf. He fumbled for his cell phone and dialed the numbers quickly, every ring 1 minute long, or so it seemed. Sue answered the phone, who only knew Flux by his first name and couldn't hear well in the bar, though hard she tried. When the caller said Flux Ickson died, she thought he said his son had died, hung up the phone, and motherly she cried. Flux's son was in the army, been at war across the sea, thus her hearing heard it wrong quite easily. It didn't take long for word to spread, as quickly as the wind. From one mouth to another it was sent. Anyone whose child dies, even if they're strangers, will find a listener's empathy lament. It would be another hour before Flux began his shift. Meanwhile, across town, a man read on. Fluxes in tide, continents wide, side on the pulses they ride, while some run and hide when the forest is dried, aware that humanity died. Like tides of the ocean in rhythms more slow, the guides of emotion rise too, and people swell with their convictions, which time often proves were untrue. Like the spinning of earth from day into night, so times of peace shine between war, as humans change just like the seasons, with predictable patterns in store. Back at the bar, a somber mood stirred, as patrons considered the news. War is not like a pretend fight where people get up when they lose. No one was aware it was all a mistake generated by similar sounds. Their thoughts and feelings and what they would do were believed upon the soberest grounds. Flux Ickson died, the passerby heard, a different image than Fluxes in Tide. The man who read poems to his nearly deaf father didn't know what transpired outside. Like that game back in school or summer camp fun when whispers passed round in a loop, the story would change each time it repeated, corrupting the original scoop. When Flux arrived through the back entrance, he was met with a hug and some tears. He sensed what no one had said yet, that fate dealt the worst of his fears. He wanted to cry but also deny, and refused to believe in the worst. His son was the light of his life, and doubted he could be so cursed. Yet, day after day the news would report fatalities of sons like his own, doing their duty to fight and defend distant enemies and dangers unknown. "How did you hear this?" he demanded at once, frightened but stubborn and brave. "A man on the phone asked if I knew, before his cell signal started to fade." Flux took a glass and threw it full strength at a mirror on the opposite wall, which shattered like the hope in his heart, with no way he could check with a call. Soldiers can't talk on the front line, and data is slow to be shared. A week he would spend while in torment, before the truth would tell how his son fared. Fluxes in tide, the poem read on, occur whether wanted or not. One hopes when the water starts rising, they are in the appropriate spot. The end.